42 Week 9 running backs ranked in tiers for your viewing pleasure. Let's kick it off with the elite options. Only two in our S tier this week, Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor. Tom, Jonathan Taylor is absolutely killing it this week. He gets a woeful Pittsburgh defense. Any concerns that the phenomenal run he's on could be coming to a premature end?
It shouldn't be. I mean, this Pittsburgh defense, which is the most expensive in the league, is just awful across the board. Patrick Queen continues to be one of the worst linebackers in the league, despite what some people like to say. Like, he is not good at tackling the ball. I think that Jonathan Taylor will be at a pick on that level. I think that the cornerbacks for the Steelers aren't particularly guys who are looking to make tackles. And Jonathan Taylor, to your point, I mean, it's just incredible. 4 games over 30 PPR points, another at 29. And the Steelers, they just look like a team who are fading fast. Their defense continuously can't get off the field. They rank 19th in rush EPA defense. And the way Jonathan Taylor's just being used, there's no reason to really overthink this one.
No, absolutely. He's on pace to tie Damian Thomas's touchdown record of 31 touchdowns. Like, anytime someone's doing that, they're plug and play RB1. You're not thinking about it, are you? In the A tier, we've got Bijan Robinson, Devon Achane, Jamar Gibbs, Derrick Henry. Now, Bijan had the dream matchup last week and hurt plenty of people. We're expecting a big bounce back against the Patriots.
Well, the Patriots, their kind of strength is against the run. They're much weaker against the pass. They allow the 6th fewest fantasy points to the running back position, but everything else is like top 10 across the board. They have been a top 5 run defense this year, and it's all that kind of interior defensive line is beastly. So I'm not sure that we see an incredible week, but it would be nice to just get a little more value out of Bijan in the pass game. Like last week with Kirk Cousins, just nothing was happening whatsoever. And you looked at his yards per carry down to a season low of like 2.78. It was, frankly, just miserable. It was only the second time that he's been below 40 rushing yards this season. So I'm sure it can't be as bad as that. But that's why he's dropped a tier here, because if Kirk Cousins is out there again instead of Michael Penix, and you've got this matchup against Patriots whose defensive line is the strength of the team, then you need to be slightly worried.
Yeah, I think for me, if Penix is back, if Drake London's back, and it kind of opens everything up, I think I'd be sneaking Bijan into that top tier, but fully understand at the moment him earning his spot down here in the A tier. Before we move into the B tier, though, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. If you made it 5 minutes into this video and haven't done so yet, what are you doing? In the B tier, we have got Josh Jacobs, Javonte Williams, Kyren Williams, and James Cook. Tom, Kyren Williams has been a fancy star at times. He's been incredibly frustrating at times. Do you think that he is going to be someone that we can rely on week in, week out as an RB1 now? Or do you think that we're drifting into that kind of RB2 territory moving forward?
Well, I mean, the push against Kyren at times is that he's just inefficient and that we don't get the explosive runs. We're still not seeing massive amounts of that. He's only had 2 games this year where he's actually hit an explosive run of 15 or more yards. But generally speaking, he's been a little bit more efficient with the ball. You go back through his game logs, 4.5 yards per carry, 3.8, 4.6, 5.9, and it's looked a little bit better. So I do think that we see an okay game from him here. But again, the Saints, their strength, much like we talked about with the Patriots a minute ago, very much better run defense than they are a pass defense. They rank 6th against the run. So it's not a perfect matchup by any means, but the Rams are favored by 14 points. Tyler Shuck starting for the Saints kind of probably makes this even more difficult for the Saints. So it kind of comes down a little bit to me. Do we see Kyren Williams for an entire game, or is this one where Blake Corum's mixing in late because the Rams are up and comfortable?
Yeah, you do worry with Tyler Shuck under center whether this could be a game where the Rams get up early, much like he did before the bye against Jacksonville, and Kyren Williams can spend the second half sat on the bench. But in the C tier, we have got Chase Brown, DeAndre Swift, Ashton Genty, Kamani Vidal, Jalen Warren, Travis Etienne, and Tyrone Tracy. I'm going to start here with Tyrone Tracy, the big waiver claim of the week. I think everybody's going to talk about him after the Cam Scatterbo injury. How comfortable are you plugging and playing him into your fantasy lineup, Tom?
Well, I mean, Tyrone Tracy wasn't bad last year. You look what he did. He ranked 16th in explosive run rate amongst running backs who had 50 or more rush attempts. He was top 4 in yards per carry on zone runs. He averaged 4.3 yards per carry. Like, he was okay. It was just, you looked at him and you went, well, that's not a complete running back. That's not somebody who's going to be massively reliable week to week in every area of the game. But I never felt like Tyrone Tracy was a bad option. Here, this feels like we probably get a good sample of him before you start worrying about Devin Singletary. The Niners have been weaker against the run than, in terms of like fantasy points allowed, rather than like, if you look at EPA figures, they're pretty good because they tend to stop massive runs, but they do give enough to touchdowns. They do give enough up to the receiving game, which is where Tyrone Tracy can make hay. And Jackson Dart was quite happy checking down to Cam Scatterbo, so I should think that he should be happy enough checking down to Tyrone Tracy. The Niners have given up the 9th most points to a position, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it feels like a rock solid RB2. If you're projecting him to be more than that, I'm probably going to be a little bit more nervous. One guy that felt like he was going to be an RB2 for the rest of the season, but is now maybe seeing some juice. Chase Brown, with games where Jake Browning was under center, didn't produce more than 12 fantasy points in a single game, averaged over 4 yards per carry in one of those games. We've now got back-to-back weeks with Joe Flacco under center where he's produced over 12 fantasy points. He averaged 9.8 yards per carry last week, 6.1 points per carry, yards per carry, and 25.5 points against the Jets. Is he potentially climbing up this list and could maybe make him a claim for the B tier as soon as next week?
Yeah, I think so. Chase Brown still is what he is. He's not necessarily going to be this particularly explosive player. He's not necessarily going to be this massively efficient player. And I think if you've got him in Dynasty, you probably need to be very confident in what your team is going forward. But for redraft, it's still the same kind of thing. He's not getting more than a high 10% target share, but he's seeing enough volume in the passing game and doing enough in the ground game where you can feel okay with it. I would say that we are seeing P. Ryan mixing behind him at a reasonably high rate over the last couple of weeks. And if things start to flip at any point, then it'll be time for concern. But going up against the Bears, who have very poor run defense, and this game is a 53-point over-under, it's hard not to start Chase Brown with confidence because, it just takes one touchdown to pay off at this level of running back in our ranks.
Yeah, it's hard to command more than a 10% target share when Jamar Chase is commanding 75% target shares and insane numbers week in, week out, isn't it? Moving into our D tier, we have got Rico Dowdle, Zonovan Knight, J.K. Dobbins, Alvin Kamara, David Montgomery, and Kenneth Walker. Tom, there's been some talk this week that the Panthers are going to shift more towards Rico Dowdle, given he has been outproducing Chuba Hubbard. Do you think that he could be a sneaky sleeper dart throw this week that could significantly outproduce this D tier ranking?
Well, the Packers' run defense is really good. They rank top 10 in rush EPA defense. They've allowed third fewest fantasy points to the position. So it's not an ideal matchup. It's not one where we can feel insanely confident. And Rico Dowdle, his biggest games did come against the Cowboys and the Dolphins, who are two teams that we aggressively want to target most weeks. But over the last 2 weeks since Chuba's been back, they've had pretty much an identical amount of carries. And we've seen 150 total yards from Rico Dowdle and 89 from Chuba. So, yeah, it's definitely right to lean into the Dowdle side on this one.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where you're glad that they're seeing sense. I don't think Chuba Hubbard's just going to get put on the back burner and it be a 1A, 1B type scenario. I still think there's going to be a lot of splits, but you're just hoping maybe Rico Dowdle gets the first roll of the dice rather than where Chuba Hubbard has the last few weeks. Before we move into the E tier, though, if you have got any questions, you're agonizing over some start-sit decisions, get them in the comments below. Tom and I will help you make sure those lineups are set perfectly for the weekend. In the E tier, we have got Ramondre Stevenson, Woody Marks, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Tyjae Spears, Tony Pollard, Kareem Hunt, Kyle Monangai, Chuba Hubbard, and Jordan Mason. Tom, Woody Marks, you touched on in the quarterbacks videos the struggles that this Texans offense is having. But Woody Marks does look explosive in the passing game and has kind of broken one the last 2 weeks. Do you think that there's some hope that we could see some more volume go to Woody Marks and could see him outproduce this ranking?
I'm not sure, because I just don't think that he's actually outplaying Nick Chubb to a strong enough level that we get that. Like, yes, we're seeing him be better in the receiving game, and yes, we're kind of seeing him have these weeks where he gets those explosive runs, which we're just not getting from Nick Chubb whatsoever. But across the board, it kind of feels like there's weeks where, I mean, you go back to week 7 and Woody Marks averaged 1.5 yards per carry, Nick Chubb 3.2. You go back like previous weeks on that, like week 5, because it week 6 bye, and it was Nick Chubb who had 5.5 yards per carry to 3.4. And I know you'll say that these are offensive line stats occasionally, but it's like when one guy is getting less from the other with the same offensive line, at a certain point, the coaches, I always kind of feel, are just looking at it and going, okay, well, who's going to pick me up the first downs? And I think Woody Marks is much more valuable in PPR because of that receiving game. But going up against this Broncos defense, who really good for out as a defense, I'm not sure that I want to play Woody Marks. I'm not sure I really want to play too many pieces from this game whatsoever.
Yeah, it's probably one that you want to avoid. And then rounding it out in the final F tier, we have got Zach Charbonnet, Aaron Jones, Trevion Henderson, Nick Chubb, Rashad Smith, RJ Harvey, and Tyler Algier. Tom, I've been expecting something out of Rashad Smith every single week so far this year. And every single week it feels like he gets about 8 snaps, 3 touches. Looks explosive, but doesn't get any more. We got no Isaiah Pacheco this week. Do you think that this could be the breakout week for Rashad Smith?
No, I don't. Just like I'm just much cooler on Rashad Smith than you said. I think that he's a fine dynasty asset, but I just don't think that we're going to see things turned over to him at any point in this game against the Bills. Like, the way to get at them is through the ground game and, you know, running up the gut at them. And I think that's much more Kareem Hunt than Rashad Smith. The way Rashad Smith wins, as you say, it's more being explosive in the passing game. And now that you've got Rashee Rice, you've got Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce, you've got Tyquan Thornton and Hollywood Brown, who've been good role players, it just becomes more difficult for me to see enough volume where I'm going to feel confident starting Rashad Smith at any point. And if you start him, it's a complete dice throw. And that's not really what I'm after.
Yeah, I think he's definitely someone that needs to be rostered. I'm certainly got plenty of shares that I'm holding on hopes for, but it's definitely a player I need to see it before I can put him in any sort of lineup and trust him. Maybe a DFS start throw if you're looking.
But that's the problem, isn't it? It's like he's a player that we need to see before we can trust him. But then by the time that you feel like you can trust him, Isaiah Pacheco could be back. And like, honestly, for me, he's not somebody I'd roster in traditional redraft leagues.
Well, there we go. Let's keep it simple. You've made it this far into the video. Like, subscribe, hype, and check out these other videos on your way out.